So, Mount Maelstrom, starting off with the jumping puzzle it looks like here. Oh my god, I got a huge ray of light shining over the screen. That first of all makes it hard to see the footage, and second of all, reveals how much dust and grime is on my monitor. I guess I'll have to clean that afterwards. So yeah, welcome back guys. We are continuing along with the Shiver Peaks here today. Mount Maelstrom is a map that, for a long time, I probably considered my favourite. Nowadays, not so much. I don't think it's really my favorite. I think there's been better stuff, particularly as we've gone through this playlist already. But what really captured me about it is how well, like, coherently themed it is. In terms of, it's like a map of the elements, guys. Like, there's a fire corner with a giant volcano. There's like a grassy, jungly corner, which is roughly where we are right now, with the old Asura ruins and fantastic stuff to see there. In fact, I may as well talk about that while we're here. This place is one of the Asura cities, so Ratasum, many miles away. Well, this is Ratapaten, and there's some nice hidden things here. This huge ruined spider event, I guess, spawns up here, which I didn't realize. But it's quite an interesting heart as well, where you're actually scanning for artifacts, and there's actually some nuance and some stuff involved. At the top of the stairs as well, you can kind of move off on the right and find all these weird, awkward hidden areas that I've always wanted to see ArenaNet do something with, but they haven't really over the years. I like this place. It's a real mystery as to when the Asura surfaced here, when they built this place, then later when they abandoned it. Because we all just kind of think of the Asura as having fled from Primordus in like one bulk and appeared together in one bulk in one wave. But the reality is, if they had a large, sprawling civilization, different areas of that civilization would be affected at different times, and Asura would surface at different times. And we've got a whole 250-year period to play with. I actually think that that's always been an interesting option for the devs, every expansion they do. And in fact, in the heart of the, you know, to basically have us go to a new region of the world, and it turns out the Asura have got there before us. You know, they kind of did that with Heart of Thorns as well, but it wasn't so much surface stuff. It was more to do with Ratanovus and so on. But yeah, I like that little influence of the Asura here. I think in terms of development, and look at how efficient we did that heart there, handing those artifacts in, that's great. I think in terms of development, the reason this is here is because, like I mentioned to you guys, the idea of fully realizing like a Steamspur Mountain area kind of never happened. So they used a lot of Tarnished Coast stuff, so jungly and, I don't know, old Asura ruins and stuff maybe just felt like they kind of fit here, kind of filled that in. But it led to a cool, interesting, like, mystery and bit of lore, even though no personal story or anything really flows into that. But back to the idea that it's kind of an elemental map. You've got a fiery corner in the south, the southwest. You've got this jungly area up here. Later, there's like a now, this isn't really an element, but I think of it as an element in a lot of ways, like the metal element or the electric element. Not lightning. I don't mean like air element. I mean like electricity. Probably because of the sci-fi movie, The Fifth Element. But you got like the technology element on the top right, courtesy of the Inquest, by and large, and all the pollution and so on. And then you've got like a big water section as well on the bottom right. So, I don't know, it just feels really cool in the way that everything's laid out. You feel like you're in 4 maps in one. And maybe the devs kind of go with that idea a little bit later in some other places, but this is kind of the original, and for that reason, it was kind of my favorite map for a while. I think nowadays, it's a little bit too empty. And by the way, I'm just talking about core. In a lot of ways, it's totally unfair to compare the core maps to the expansion ones, because the expansion ones have so much more going on with them. They're so much bigger in some cases, particularly, like, look at Path of Fire. And I include a lot of Living World maps in with that as well, where, you know, there's just kind of a different bar of quality. But comparing amongst the original 25 or 31, depending on if you want to include the cities, yeah, I think this one was pretty good for a long time. Where we're standing as well, by the way, is actually kind of a super useful area for players, and I'm not sure most people know this, but this waypoint here has a bank and a trading post at it. And the funny thing is, when you're playing this game and you're generally looking to go to one of the main cities, say Lion's Arch, or you want to go to Divinity's Reach or something, nearly always the only 2 services that matter are a bank and a trading post. Sometimes you want to do some crafting, which admittedly that area that is here on this map doesn't have. And sometimes you'll want to use the Mystic Forge as well, making Lion's Arch like the truly special one, you know, aside from gem store lobbies and so on. But it's mostly bank and trading posts for most jobs. And what that means is here in Mount Maelstrom is a packed outpost that is kind of exactly as good as a city for most purposes most of the time. This ghost is really cool to speak to. You can check out my personal story to get a little bit more detail on that. But so, yeah, Mount Maelstrom's like got like a mini city. And the devs know that, by the way. They know that having a bank and a trading post together is really profound. That's why almost nowhere else in the whole game is that true. Like, think about some of the starting maps where there's the little havens and things you can go to with the crafting stations. Well, sure, you've got a bank and crafting stations there, but crucially, no trading post. And then along comes this map way down to the south, which is a bit weird because we're also very close to Fort Trinity, which is also supposed to, I think, in some ways feel like a main city. I certainly remember my first time ever playing and seeing Fort Trinity being wowed by that. I guess we'll talk about that in Straits of Devastation. But there's no bank or TP there. But then there is slightly to the north. There is some practical benefit to this as well, and more so going back in the years. But if you were going to play a ton of Orion content maybe, or if you're on a weak rig that doesn't like rendering, like Lion's Arch. I did a Lion's Arch city video. I think you guys should have seen it by now, or you will be very soon. In that Lion's Arch video, I talked about the pros and cons of old LA versus new LA. And one thing that no one talks about or respects about new LA is that it's way more optimized. Old Lion's Arch was dense and cluttered, took ages to load in. Like, there used to be killer Lion's Arch loading screens. And people, of course, you know, when you do something right, people don't ever really remark on it or talk about it, and you don't sort of get the right feedback. But the truth is that those loading screens are nowhere near as bad anymore. And as well, when you were in there, frame drop, massive frame drop on people that weren't, you know, already using really good cards and really good CPUs, which is important in an MMO where you're trying to get a big, broad player base. So anyway, if you were back in those days, you wanted to avoid those downsides, there was always this map, and there was always that place if you wanted a quick trading post and bank next to one another. So there wasn't some actual value to it, really. So yeah. Anyway, moving down into the volcanic area of the map. Now, this volcano did not exist here in Guild Wars 1. Kind of popped up. I think we can definitely chalk it up to the idea of the destroyers. This heart in particular, you'll see we're getting these volcanic earth elemental cores. Yeah, there's so many items and stuff on this map to do with the elements as well. So yeah, the destroyers probably caused this. A really big badass world boss is here. Sadly, in the early days right before launch, I don't remember really participating in that too much. I also don't know if I've ever transformed myself into a golem here. What's that for? Why would you transform yourself into a golem for this heart? I don't think I've ever done that. You can generally kill things. This is a cool area, particularly because up the slope, there's a hidden event. If you actually tried to climb up the volcano, you can trigger it, kill some fire elementals, get some special items that could even be sold on the trading post. But if you take all the special items from the map here, I think that you can trigger the event. Very, very cool little hidden thing. The sides of the volcano themselves, you know, I think at launch were very hostile and very dangerous, and most people would spend their time low down in these cracks and crevices. Nowadays with mounts, you can very easily climb up and regularly climb up. And there's all kinds of amazing sights you can get where you actually jump in through the caldera of the volcano, which is brilliant. I have to say, I adore the layout of this area with the little inquest base and you know, stairways and floating platforms nestled in between these thick, high cliffs on your left and right. It's great. And then finally finding an entrance into the bowels of the volcano with all those tight, you know, closed in low roofs. And it gets very hot, and it's just, I think they did something very well, showing magma. Wait, what's it? Magma is while it's still underground, right? So is it magma in here, but lava outside? Is that the truth? Is it now magma here? In any case, look at this. Look at the lighting here. And this isn't just because of, you know, exotic post-processing that TechZoon's thrown on. It's just a really amazing, awesome-looking place that responds super well to reshade and stuff if you go for it. So this is why you fight the boss. A couple of personal story steps in here as well, and several living world updates have kind of updated this area. You'll notice there's kind of a few interactables marked by yellow nameplates where you'd come along here if you're trying to hatch an egg. I believe when Season 2 came out, you had to come here to hatch Maudry, an Ascended backpack, which was still something of a novelty at the time, being able to get an Ascended backpack. We're at the point now where just for birthday gifts, we're getting like Ascended amulets and stuff, so hey, I'm sure that that's fast falling away from people's memory. Yeah, it's a great place. The meta event is pretty good as well. Could be better, to be honest. As with many of them, kind of overwhelmed by power creep these days, but it's not bad. So where we are now, we're climbing up to get a vista, which has always been there. This has been the main experience of climbing up the volcano. Nearby, though, there is actually a chance for a dynamic event to spawn, and it was one of these events that got added with the Halloween update. Now, I talked a bit about this when we were in Dredgehaunt Cliffs, but with the first Halloween, the devs kind of almost snuck in extra content, and they did something on this map that was amazing. They added a jumping puzzle. Now, the jumping puzzle is on the map, but in a, like, secluded section surrounded by cliffs that you will not be able to travel to by conventional means. In fact, I think there's even invisible walls over the cliff, so even nowadays with the mountains and stuff, you can't just go there. The only way to get to it is also around the maps. There are 4 dynamic events. They're not a part of chains or metas or anything like that. It's 4 random events, each themed with a different element. So there's like a watery one, and there's like a windy one, and so on. And they're basically enemies. You kill the enemy, and once it dies, it leaves a portal behind. A mysterious portal. You press F on it, it transports you into this beautiful area with an amazing tree on a hill surrounded by rocks and mud beneath it. And then the jumping puzzle itself is like elemental themed. You've got to collect all these different orbs in there. One is windy, one is watery, and so on. It's great. It's one of the most beautiful areas of all of Guild Wars 2, and I include the expansions in that. There's something so captivating and exciting about it. When I'm in that area, I feel like a bug, you know, because everything's so big. I feel like a bug, you know, next to like a little, what should be a little tree, but it's enormous to us. It actually reminds me of the old PlayStation 1 game, A Bug's Life, if anyone ever played that, which actually is a game I really enjoyed. I know it's kind of one of these silly movie cash-in games that you're not supposed to care much about, but my god. So, moving north again here, a little bit more with the script. This is a heart that I think about a lot with one of the Timberline hearts too, where there's a guild challenge in the same cave. It's just like a cave filled with scritty things to do, and it's like, yay, okay. There we just pick up some of their stuff. Again, I'm amazed how efficiently TechZoom did that. I usually spend a lot more time in there. One cool thing, at least in that cave here for Mount Maelstrom, is you can find like target dummies that look like spiders and stuff, I think. I don't know whether you can interact with them here or that's just somewhere else on a different area of the world, but they're pretty fun. And then finally, we come up here for the northern areas. Now, this place is really interesting. If you watch my commentary of the Grove, you'll hear I mentioned in the initial trailer there's a shot with some Sylvari that they pass off as being the Grove. It's not the Grove. It's here on Mount Maelstrom. There's like a bridge near a waterfall, like quite a small waterfall, but a pretty area. And for the initial trailer of the game, they stacked a bunch of Sylvari on it and shot it, making you think you were on the Tarnished Coast, but instead you're over here. And I mean, I know that this is kind of also Tarnished Coast, but still, it's a weird one, definitely. This is an amazing event for a few reasons. First, it's a really high quality event. It's an infiltration event where you can transform yourself into various animals. We've picked the rabbit here because it's the fastest. And you need to sneak in near all of these ghosts. Another nice moment where we see ghosts that aren't faux fire ghosts, by the way. And they are really deadly. If you try and go in there regularly, they'll just blow you up. They'll kill you real goddamn quick. The event also has this extra quality where it's tied to the Renown Heart, as you can see there. So it's a worthwhile, different experience. Now, we're in the late game maps now. You know, we're leaving the mid game maps. We're coming into late game maps. I would say Mount Maelstrom's late game. You know, we're level 61. There's only 19 combat levels in the whole game. At this point, players are looking for something new. They're looking to sort of tweak up the experience a bit. So anything that breaks a pattern... Here you go. This is exactly where the trailer was. This bridge. That's what they were shooting. It's weird, right? So they're looking for things to change it up. So an event like that's good. But even for like players that are kind of min-max oriented, it's also a good thing because once you beat that event, you can buy a potion of undead slaying. And potions of undead slaying are really useful because we're about to go into the Orion campaign. We're about to deal with a ton of Risen, and so you can pick them up there. They're not like top tier. Top tier is like 10% less damage from undead, 10% more damage to undead, and this is like 8%. But it's, you know, come on, it's a 2% difference. And I think the only other downside is they run out quite quickly, so you've got to double click more and maybe spend a little bit more money. So here we are at the Gauntlet Waypoint. Another packed base. This is one of those places where if you look up on the cliffs, you can see that the packed base is supposed to give you an impression of being really big and extending off into the distance. But really, it's just there's these little miniature buildings that are right next to you that you're just supposed to think they're far away. That's why they're small. The truth is they're just in mini, and on mounts you can do fun stuff with it. I spent a lot of time here over my time playing Guild Wars 2. A crazy amount of time. And why? Well, because the dungeon on this map, the Crucible of Eternity, which is a fascinating place to do the story and, you know, just do dungeon runs, it can get locked. And when it's locked, you have to go to that fort to start the meta event. Go into the troll cave that you saw we were briefly in, push the event all the way out, come on straight through here, and finally you get to open it up. So I've spent a massive amount of time here just because of all the dungeon running that I used to do. And as a sign of all the dungeon running I used to do, I used to save all my currencies up for a while. And I did a video where I exchanged it all into money. And I had like thousands of tokens, hundreds of thousands of tokens. It was crazy. And in the video, I never vended like my trash sigils or something, which was actually worth like 10 gold. Lots of people commented about that. I remember that very clearly. Anyway, this place is steeped in lore. You know, I could spend this entire video talking about this. I kind of already did it in the personal story series, so we don't have to worry very much. But this is a lab where the Asura, the Inquest, are trying to blend together the powers of the Elder Dragons, and they're just trying to learn more about them. This is almost kind of a replacement for the Thormanova reactor. And so you'll notice there's all these zones. Zone Violet is equated to Kralkatorrik, and you've got an icy zone for Jormag and so on. And then there's a mystery green zone, which should make you think, huh, wait, hold on, green? There is no green Elder Dragon. And then, of course, when you get into the explorable dungeon, there's more hints about some kind of dragon lurking in the distance that we don't know anything about. Well, so a particular note maybe nowadays is the blue zone, which is associated with the deep sea dragon. And there's basically nothing in there, but you can hear the Asura in there talking about how the place isn't big enough for the specimen. They had some kind of underwater specimen that was associated with the deep sea dragon the Inquest had actually managed to find, but it's too big. So I like this idea that a lot of the deep sea dragon stuff is like gargantuan, and you know, there's this titanic element, and that'll work because, you know, it's all underwater. You know, it's kind of like how IRL, the blue whale, is the largest living organism we've ever known. I mean, unless you kind of break it down into plants that exist in colonies and stuff like that. But, you know, the blue whale's huge, and it's because things underwater can get huge. And, you know, the blue whale is the largest thing, even in prehistory. It's kind of nuts how big the blue... And we live in an era where we can see them. I wonder whether that's just because fossils for Titanic... you know, aquatic life from years ago kind of are really hard to recover somehow. I don't know. That's probably an interesting thing to look into. Anyway, I like the idea that in Guild Wars 2, when we finally do interact with Deep Sea Dragon minions, because we haven't been able to do that yet. When we do that, it's not all just going to be tentacles and Cthulhu horror. That they'll go with something like big creatures. That would be cool. So yeah, now we also get a really cool heart where if we speak to that NPC, he'll actually transform you into a Risen. You'll get disguised as one. And you can spend a good, you know, 20 minutes or so running around in this big lake here, this inland sea, killing Crate. And the idea is that you're trying to pit their forces to get against one another and, you know, demonstrate how dangerous and how serious of a threat the Risen are. I think the Crate fully understand that, though. This is also the other lake that's connected to the Timberline ones. Also, amazing. We've got to talk about Guild Wars 1 here. So, I'll throw Shaman's map up, finally, at this point in the video. Droknar's Forge. Wow. So, I would say this place feels very remote in Guild Wars 2. There's not much happening here. We're very far away. Well, there's a lot happening, but we're very far away from all the other races' starting points. What's amazing, though, is in Guild Wars 1, there was a full-blown town here. A great city and outpost of the dwarves. There was, in lore, the Thunderhead Keep and Thunderhead City, first of all, which we can't quite overlap with. But as players, there was Droknar's Forge, which was just this immensely populated place that was really, really important, particularly in the earlier years. It was the first place where you could buy that max level armor. It's where people would do all the Snake's Dance and Lornar's Pass runs to get to. It was super populated. It was like, okay, if you're a Droknar's Forge, you're at endgame, okay? I think of Droknar's Forge as the Guild Wars 1 equivalent of Guild Wars 2's Lion's Arch. And by that, I mean, like, it's the city where people hang out at once they're at endgame, right? That's what I mean. So, it's a bit like Ascalon City as well, you know, which was like the first city. How are ArenaNet gonna deliver it to us in Guild Wars 2? That could have been such a big feature of this map, because we do overlap with it. And yet, it's nothing. It's just like a little puddle and some submerged ruins, but we've already kind of seen submerged Dwarven ruins at Lornar's Pass, so it just didn't feel special in any way. And it's just kind of there. I guess it just all comes down to they had bigger ideas once with the whole Steamspur Mountain thing, but when they got knocked on the head, so did the idea of really paying good respect to Drox's Forge or something. And, you know, there's a certain value in not making a big fuss about old areas, because, you know, in real life, that's what happens. You know, things that were once extremely important get lost and forgotten about. And that can include entire cities. I mean, Christ, I was reading just the other day about... There was some, like, massive Egyptian city that got flooded and is, like, a little bit underwater. And nobody knew about it. It, like, been referred to in a couple of texts, but not many. And it was recently found. Like, within the most recent decade, it was found. And they're, like, excavating an entire underwater city filled with, like, relics and artifacts and stuff. I mean, it's shallow water, but it was submerged. And, you know, it was this place of great commerce near the Nile, near the Delta. It's crazy. That happens in real life, you know. Things are lost. And so maybe it's cool, and maybe it's profound in some way, to have Drox's Forge just be lost, just as we kind of had with Athlon City. Anyway, around here, even more amazing stuff. The Largos. That Largos is kind of special in that many of the other Largos around Tyria are associated with dynamic events. There's barely any of them, but they're dynamic events, so you can't just casually go chat with them. It gives this sense of the Largos as this distant, ever-moving, powerful race that they're out of your reach. You can't just stand around and chat with them because they're always busy and they're not interested in you in a certain extent. And that's why it's so cool in the personal story where you get one to interact with. But even the personal story itself will go away and that Largos won't be available to you. And then there's this one in the cave, which is a hero challenge. They don't fight in an interesting way. It's actually quite a tanky hero challenge, I have to say, so I'm surprised we beat it so quickly. But you get a Largos there, and this is kind of special to me, because it's like, oh, this is a Largos I could ask about the Tetios Compact, and I could ask about where they come from and stuff, because they're just sitting there forever. It's not the only Largos on the map. There's one in a dynamic event in the same general area as well, I think. So this heart, what do we have to talk about here? Well, I think that you can basically play the hacking minigame to open these little cells. I usually just kill Inquest. That looks like that's what TechZine's doing a lot of as well here. Not much more to say, really. I think this is supposed to be vaguely associated with the main facility up to the north. I mostly only come here to deal with one of the portals to the jumping puzzle. There's a mower that can spawn here. And yeah, I mean, this is probably quite a forgettable thing here, but there is a little Hylek outpost. You do get to see Hylek struggling with the effects of the Inquest polluting the area on the northeastern corner of the map. But there's not much going on here. Probably the coolest thing is a hint at another explorable map. A bit like the Brisbane Bandit Bridge. Way off over in this corner, and they even encourage you to come here to a certain extent because of the map completion. There is a road on our right going off to the east, and it's barricaded. And the question is, like, where does that go? Where does that take us? Well, in subsequent years, they added the Labyrinthine Cliffs and the Zephyrite area, which does return in a festival now. So we kind of do know what's down that road. But the road itself was never connected to the Labyrinthine Cliffs. And so it's kind of a bit weird. If you want to go to the cliffs, you've got to go by hot air balloon during the festival. And I guess that road will never be used for anything. Unlike some of the other hints as to other maps that still are there, like the Bandit Bridge, this one's kind of cut off on the other side now and is a bit sloppily done, a bit unfortunate. You've also got, in Season 4, Thunderhead Keep, which is also really near this area now in the Deljamore front. So I don't really know what ArenaNet would do. Maybe a map that goes slightly south as well and kind of helps to bridge the Crystal Desert into the Shiver Peaks, kind of. And the Desert Highlands, you could maybe have that, but I don't know. With the way that the game's packaged, with expansion sales and stuff, it just seems a bit odd to me. This area is brilliant. So, I remember, as Guild Wars 2 was coming out, another MMO was also in its, like, pre-release hype stuff, and ended up beating Guild Wars 2 to the punch by quite a long way. It was a 2008 release. Guild Wars 2 was originally slated to come out in 2008, but it took them 4 more years. Wait, was it 2008? Maybe it wasn't that early. Anyway, another MMO was coming out called Ion. Maybe you guys have heard of it. Even Guild Wars 1 did a cross-promotional thing with it, both being published by NCSoft, so they were kind of like twinned MMOs in a way. Anyway, in that game, they had going underwater and there'd be pockets of air to explore. And, you know, some of the big competitors have been doing that as well for years. World of Warcraft, and I went back to play that, the classic World of Warcraft, just this year. Well, just last year. And I noticed that they had that there. Now, when I got here in Mount Maelstrom, I was really hoping ArenaNet had implemented something similar, because those underwater labs look amazing. And I wanted nothing more than to enter that lab and explore it on foot, knowing that I was surrounded by water. I thought that would be so cool. I really wanted that. But it's not actually a thing in Guild Wars 2. Even to this day, they've not really managed to successfully do that with this game. So, yeah, a bit of a weird one. But I like swimming around there. There's a very dangerous champion shark that can spawn there too. I have a lot of memories of that. And actually doing some Weapon Slayer stuff there as well. Or maybe Precursor collecting actually was the last time I was spending a lot of time there. So over here, we got a little bit more Sylvari influence. And, well, check it out. This is a place I've spent much time at. This is a great map because it has not just a dungeon entrance and a cool jumping puzzle and a meta event with the Mega Destroyer down in the volcano, but 2 meta events. Oh boy. I think this, aside from the Orient maps, which kind of have 2 god temples, this is the only example of a place in Guild Wars 2 where you get 2 world bosses, big world bosses on timers. You got the Mega Destroyer, and then down here is where you would fight the Golem Mark II. Kind of a repeat of the tutorial mission for the Asura. That takes place all the way up here. Get the heart done really quick with this environmental weapon here, which is reusing some elementalist icons. And there you have it. We get map comp, and look at that. We even get lucky with the Black Lion chest key. And that's kind of what it's all about, right? So there you have it. Thanks very much to TechZoon. Brilliant stuff with Mount Maelstrom there. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I will see you next time for some of the last maps before Ore. Looking forward to it. Back to the Charlands, I think, actually.